Okay, so we're asking the big question today. Am I an alcoholic or an addict? How do you answer that question? Now, there's a simple set of questions that we can answer that help you understand if you're on the substance use disorder spectrum, and if you are, how far along that spectrum you are. Because there's a point in being on the substance use disorder spectrum where you can, take control, stop drinking and drugging, stop abusing alcohol. And let's stick with alcohol, and we can replace it with any other drug. But let's say you can stop drinking and stop abusing it if you haven't reached a certain point. Where is that magical point? Now, when I talk about that magical point, I'm not talking about life circumstances. I'm talking about what's actually happening in your neurology. Because in a normal drinker, or somebody who's simply abusing alcohol for a short period but don't have the physiological or psychological addiction to it, we have a different process going on in the brain. So a normal drinker has a drink, gets a hit of dopamine. It's all happening in the reward centers of the brain. Feels good, has another one, feels good, has another one, feels good, then realizes, because the prefrontal cortex, the executive functioning, is still online, they realize there's consequences, they need to do something in the morning, they're going to stop. The alcoholic, it's not working in the same way anymore. It's being controlled by the mammalian brain, and the decisions aren't going past the prefrontal cortex. So there's no consequences. That's why you can't stop, because this part of the brain isn't working anymore. The reward centers, it's not the same functioning. There's a certain point where it starts sitting back in the mammalian brain, the part of the brain that controls your heart rate and your breathing, and you just can't outthink that. Hence the I can't stop. So addiction is not as obvious as people would think. Think, if you drink alone, you're an addict, or if you drink all the time, or you got the paper bag in a car park, then you're an alcoholic. Do I look like a crazy alcoholic to you? I was, and the denial was so thick. I was literally leaving the home in an ambulance. Well, if I'm really honest, multiple times before I actually admitted to myself that I was an alcoholic. And the denial piece is a whole other video. Let's just stick to the core question, am I an alcoholic? So ask yourself the questions. Have I tried to cut down and not been able to? So swapping to from spirits to wine, starting to drink later, trying to stop drinking on certain nights. Have you tried to cut down and not been able to? Have you tried to stop and not been able to? So, you've tried to stop for a month or for a couple of weeks, but you couldn't make the period that you committed to. So there's the first two questions. Third one, has somebody that you loved, or somebody that you care about, or multiple people in your life told you that you have a problem with drink or drugs? Because as I mentioned before, one of the actual symptoms of the disorder, because it is a neurological disorder, is denial. So sometimes we're kind of the last to see it. So has someone that you love told you? Next question, have there been consequences? So firstly, consequences in terms of if you're not being able to turn up for work, if you're not being able to turn up for social occasions. See, life kind of getting smaller because you're making a lot of decisions based around whether you can drink. That's a warning sign. So if we're kind of answering all of these questions as, no, I can't cut down, no, I can't stop, yes, somebody in my family, we're on the substance use disorder spectrum. And here's the clincher. If you answer this question as a yes, then you can't go back to normal drinking. You really are. So all of those questions, or answering any of those questions, and the affirmative is going to mean that you're on the substance use disorder spectrum. And whole other video to look at how far you're on that spectrum, whether it's harm mitigation, taking a break from alcohol, or whether it's long-term sobriety is the solution. Let's just stick to the question, are you an alcoholic? Do you need to have a drink in the morning, or do you feel better in the morning after you have a drink? So when you wake up in the morning after a big night drinking, you feel horrible. Maybe rather than feeling so sick or the kind of hangovers that you used to get, you actually feel really anxious and fearful. And you have a drink and you feel better. It's going to be okay. If that's the case, if you answered yes to that question, then you have a physiological addiction to alcohol. And so now we're really looking at some serious consequences. Now, we don't have to be like, this is like AA and sobriety forever just yet. But we have to know that you really are, you are an alcoholic. If you start drinking, you can't stop. Even if you can go big gaps. I used to be able to go months without drinking. But if you start and you can't stop, you have a problem. And if you need a drink to feel better, you have a serious problem. And so I'll leave it here for today, but you will need to have a break from alcohol and again, see whether you're able to stop. Even if you look at like AA basics, Bill Wilson would, the founder would even say, by the way, I'm not a huge AA advocate, but I think it can be really helpful in recovery. If you don't think you're an alcoholic, try drinking. So seriously, I'm saying go and try drinking, see if you can stop, and then try stopping and see if you can stay stopped. Try for at least a month. So maybe if you've tried and you can stop, try drinking and stopping. So say have 4 Saturday nights and say, I'm going to stop drinking at 10 p.m. Can you do it? If you can't, come back and watch some more videos. If you give yourself a month and you can't stay stopped, come back and watch some more videos. If you have immense difficulty in doing either of those two tasks, come back and watch some more videos, because we're also going to talk about recovery, not just forever sobriety, but how you can just get back on track, whether that is to be a normal drinker or whether that's long-term recovery. And as someone who's had to choose long-term recovery, and it was not a choice that I wanted to make, it actually turned out being the best thing that I ever did in my life. Like, I am the person I am because of my journey, because of those dark nights of the soul, because I don't numb, dumb, distract. Like, it's the toughest thing you'll ever do, but it's the most powerful. If you want to transform as a person, recovery is an absolute gift. So either way, we're going to have a good solution. We're going to get you to either be able to drink responsibly or transform through recovery.